Alright, good evening folks. So today, our boy, the man himself, Jason Sadites, Jason Sadites, did this great little video on the Helix Command Center and how the Helix controls other MIDI devices, because the Helix itself is a massive MIDI controller and one of the best that you're going to get. And it's kind of perhaps strange to think of it that way, but it is. I don't know how many people go about using it. Everybody in the MIDI Mad Scientist group does. And kind of my mission since coming into the whole Helix thing has always been to take this, a Variax, 60 guitars in one, with different tunings. This is all MIDI controlled. Now, this is not a MIDI guitar. This is a super brainy thing that takes piezo signals, uses DSP to convert them, and this is like the ultimate in monophonic technology. So string per string, there's one sensor for you Star Trekky people out there, per string, and that is doing monophonic pitch shifting, changes, this, that, and the other, DSP googamiggle in there to change string by string signals to sound like other signals. So a Les Paul style guitar becomes a Strat, or it becomes a P90 loaded one, or the pickups virtually change, or you can move them around, or you can do anything with this thing. That's really why I got into Helix in the first place. Let's get back to Jason. Jason's my boy. He's one of the major contributors to knowledge in the Helix group. And the other guy, super kudos to, is Steve Sterlacci, who for me does stuff that's amazing, because he's up there with his wife, singing away, playing away, doing this stuff, and he's controlling all the effects for her guitar as well as his guitar at the same time, and that for me is just poof. And that's why, more or less, I got into MIDI. It's like, if you can do all that stuff for the Helix, wow. So the Command Center, and we're going to be going into that a lot in the channel, is the ultimate MIDI switcher, and that usually freaks people out. But let's put it this way: if you're used to, in a Helix, using the expression pedal to control a parameter on an amp, turn up the drive, if you're used to using snapshots, which go through all of those blocks and tweak little things on it, that is MIDI. It's as simple as that. There's just a few little things that one would have to know. Like one of the things in Jason's video, he set up his Rev 20 amp and the Helix on the floor, and they were both on channel 1. And this is kind of a no-no. I'll explain why. MIDI is a one-way show. So one box comes MIDI out, talks to another box going MIDI in. If you've just got two boxes, one is talking to the other. So one is the mouth, one is the ear. And the ear is just going to listen to what's said. No big deal. The second you add another one in there, think of a three-way phone conversation. This is how I explain it to everybody. Your MIDI rig is like a neighborhood. And every house, every pedal, has its own telephone line. If the numbers are the same in the MIDI channels, there are only 16 of them, so you can only have 16 pedals at once that will independently do things. If two of those houses in the neighborhood both had the same number, when you called and said, hey, house number 3, if there were two house number 3s, both house number 3s would wake up and start doing stuff. And if they were exactly the same, they would do exactly the same thing. If they weren't, if one was a delay and one was a reverb, external ones, Strymons, whatever, and you sent them the same CC and they had matching CCs in there. Now, what CC is, for a MIDI newbie, A control change is like this. Say you have a knob on a thing. Not a switch, but an actual knob. Think of the normal thing, twisty thing. The CC number is this arm. So CC16, this is my CC16 arm, control change 16. These 0 to 127, which you would put in the command center, starts at 0 and all the way up to full. So 0 is 0 and 10 is 127 because it's 2 to the 8. Like that. So 50% halfway up, 12 o'clock, would be 128 divided by 2, 63, 64. Get it? Think about that. Think about a DJ. You know how DJs who are sitting there on the mixer doing stuff, they're bopping a head away. They've always got hands like little chicken feet. They nip down, twist the knob, and nip back up. That is MIDI. Twist the bass, add that, push the slider, mix and match, bop the head. Those are MIDI freaks in humankind, and that's exactly what you're doing. So, get it in the frame, Alec, come on. There's a knob. That is a CC working. A program change is you flipping through your phone or flipping through your Helix setting presets. The presets are numbered in the Helix, 0 to 127, 2 to the 8th. So that's the structure of MIDI. That's all there is to it. You want to call up someone's house, have them answer, you give them a program change number, it's saying, hey, dial through the presets, give me this one. You send them a CC message, you're saying, hey, this number 3. Grab that knob and twist it. You're doing that all day, every day in the Helix. And maybe you don't know it, but that's all MIDI is. So think about that. The only thing that's really complicated with MIDI is knowing what knob to twist and when, and what thing to turn on or off when you want it to. That's it. As Jason had on the screens, you would bring up all of the list of commands that are possible. They will all have CC numbers, and that is simply reverb CC22, 0 to 127. Done. Decide where you want to go in that frame, send that out, and the switch magically moves on the block. The big difference is in the Helix, this is all controlled by a form of sysx messaging, or who really cares? It works. Outside, when you're actually making a call from one pedal to another pedal, you give the address and you give the instruction. So keep all the channels separate. The Helix has to be on a channel. Every other pedal has to be on a separate channel. It's pretty simple from that point of view. It took me a good while to figure out back in the day. And the thing that really, really helps if you're working on Command Center and things seem a little overwhelming, which is really not, go and check out in the MIDI Mad Scientist Club, there is a document in the file section called the Unofficial Helix MIDI Guide. A few pages. Thomas Hoyle wrote it. The dude is brilliant. He's also known as Stupolini on the net. And he saved my butt a billion times in the first few months when you're there like this saying, what is this stuff? Read that document, everything becomes clear. And from there on out, you can control everything. Super fun, super easy. So, end of part 1. MIDI intro. Big up to Jason for doing that. If you want to know more about this stuff, join the MIDI Mad Scientist Club. We talk about this day and night all the time. What can you do? And here's why it's kind of a cool and fun and big deal. When I first got this, I got a Helix LT because that was the only thing that had VDI that cost a reasonable amount that could control my beloved Variacs. I just started learning this stuff. Loved it so much, I went to an HX Stomp about 6 months later when it first came out. Waited a month for it and was going crazy. I was thinking, what am I going to do? So I started messing around with a Morningstar. Mainly because I kept the Helix up off the floor and I wanted to control stuff on the floor. And what was it? It was the looper pedal. You know, your forward, reverse, all that sort of stuff. There just weren't enough buttons on the Helix LT for me to get done what I wanted to do. Like, I was trying to learn to play. I'm still a student of guitar. And if I wanted to use the looper, well, I wanted to use everything in the looper, so forward, reverse, all that kind of stuff. You could concentrate on that, but what I was doing was playing a couple of chords, recording it, getting out of the looper, going to the patch or the preset, changing the snapshots, doing it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. When I went to the Stomp, which only has the 3 buttons on board, then it became super evident. 3 buttons is just never going to be enough, and if you leave it as snapshots, maybe, but if you want to do looping, if you want to do anything else, if you want to just go up and down through the presets, you need more switches. And I guess the point is, let's talk about the concept. The more you limit yourself in doing stuff, the joy, the beauty of the HX Stomp is this. When you had only 6 blocks instead of 2 big, massive DSPs worth of stuff, and you could spread out and have fun, you got to really think about it and concentrate the stuff down. The Stomp is the ultimate training ground for doing that. Now, if it's going to go up to 8 blocks, if it's going to get its own little command center, it's going to be great. But you still need a Midi controller externally so that you have the extra buttons to do all the extra stuff that you want to do, if you get what I'm saying. Here's the fun bit. Yesterday, my Iridium died, and I've got to say this. The Helix is so good because you can do pretty much anything on it and get through a show. You can, it's a truly all-in-one pedal. So even little Stomp can do anything you need within reason, but needs more control. So why would you add other pedals? Well, for me, if I have to go out and go somewhere, I want an all-in-one pedal that does just this. But if you're also like me and you're at home, you have none of that stress. You're in a studio space environment. You're sitting around in your bedroom. You've carved out a little space for you in the house. And you want to start exploring different sounds. You want to start messing with pitch shifting, compressors, delays, reverbs, different kinds, different flavors, things that aren't necessarily in the Helix. And if you're playing with an Iridium where the knobs are different, where you can tune things in differently, it's faster in some aspects. It doesn't matter if it's better or worse, it's different, and different is awesome. When you have a multi-pedal system like this, and things fail, that's kind of cool, because take the Stomp, which will do your amps and stuff, but it will also do your drives, but it will also do your delays and effects, and you've got those 6 blocks there. Just 6 or 8 will come up. To go beyond that, if you start adding in like a plethora, which has 5 different engines all at once, so 8 and 5 is 13. If you then add a Sim 1 over here, which has 99 guitar models, so 30 more than this. If you pump that through a Sim 1, that's 159 combinations of guitar things that are all working. The Sim 1 also has amps, also has drives, doesn't have, it's a little reverb, but it doesn't have delays, it doesn't have all the cool Helixy stuff. This is the real point of diversifying and spreading out your DSP. It's the same thing. I think most people would understand this who are in the group. It's like TCP, it's like network diversification on a small scale. So for something the same size as a big helix, you can get in as much DSP as you want. You can change it as and where you want. And if one of those pedals fail, like my Iridium did yesterday, which is being repaired and the guys are being amazing about it, if your pedal fails, then you can reshuffle the DSP on the fly and take the amp and cab that the Iridium is doing and move it back into the Helix. And you still have sound. And that for me is the most amazing thing about MIDI controlling. It's not taking separate things that do separate jobs and mixing them together. It's not just that. It's diversification across. It's making your own signal chain, but elongating it and then spinning it back around and making it smaller. So if you have 3 boxes, all of which that can do amps, but all of which can do other things, take 3 different stomps. You could have one stomp that's just your drives, one stomp in the middle that's 2 different amps, and one stomp at the end, which is doing all of your modulation effects and post stuff. And you can control all 3 of them. That may sound extreme for a single person, but consider it the other way, and consider something like the normal QC, which has 4 paths going through, and is kind of designed to do the Steve Sterlacci thing, or the Helix floor thing. And that is run multiple instruments through, multiple instruments out, and one person can control it. Well, think about that. Network together helixes. I did a video the other day, and a guy asked, well, why would you do that? And it's like, stop thinking in terms of one, just you and your instrument and the thing. Think in terms of the band. You know, why we get together to make music, to jam and sing. Add it all together, string it out, and think about that. You could have a bassist and you and a rhythm player and a keyboardist, all of them. You know, we're mostly guitarists, but think about this. I've been messing with this plethora here. 5 different effects, and now I'm controlling it from the floor, turning stuff on and off. If you work as a team, or if you think as a team on stage doing things, if you think of yourself as a Sterlacci type who's running Jessica's effects and his own effects at the same time with snapshots, so it's not complicated, it's all pre-programmed before, maybe, or maybe he's just that much of a brain. But think about this. Combine Sadites, Sterlacci, Jessica, all these together. That is the power of MIDI. And if one of those were to fail in the middle of a concert, it can kind of arrange itself, you know, switch to a different patch that doesn't use those but uses other things, and things just work. Share the load. That really is the ultimate power of MIDI rigs, and that's what happens on huge stages. You know, I'll give you another metaphor for it. Think of lights. You've got a stage. I do stage work. And you've got someone singing and you're doing the lighting for them. You never have one light pointed on them, because if that light bulb died, they're in the dark. Can you imagine? So you always have 2 sets of lights beaming down on that person, not just to, you know, color the face nicely. Think of it as a photographic thing. You've always got 2 flashes going on your subject, working together. MIDI allows the same thing with music. You can control 2 or 3 or 4 different directions, illuminate your audience with music, and if any one of those things ever failed, and you keep going. Power of the hive mind, power of the network. That's the exciting bit about me. Check you later.